Facilities management typically touches all the 5 elements of a human being: your sight, your taste, your smell, your ears, and your touch. All of them facility management touches. And if you're not able to touch,
how AI is going to be benefiting facility management in near future?
building भी एक जीता जागता एक structure है.
एक structure.
It has its life. It functions in a particular manner in that 24 hours. If you are not able to mirror that, then I think FM is running very tactically.
Okay.
Right? So I think that has to get understood by every FM, and that is missing today.
Hi, welcome to the another episode of the RK Talk Show. This show brings the entire life's various gamuts, be it life all about medical, life all about infrastructure, life all about sports, fitness, or any genre. Today, we welcome our guest, none other than Mr. Saji Sebastian.
Hi, Rahul.
How are you, sir?
Good.
It's so nice to see you today on my show. So when we talk about Dubai, during my recent visits, I've seen, because I was always curious to know that in the temperature of 40, 45, still there is beautiful gardens which are maintained. इतने तापमान में भी वहाँ पर फूल पौधे लाइन में हैं. आपके रोड साइड के पेमेंट ब्लॉक्स पे अगर आप देखोगे तो वो जो ग्रीन एरिया है इट इज़ इवन. सो ये सब पॉसिबल तब हो रहा है जब देयर इज वन ओनर. And that is what I have observed. The ownership of the maintenance is with the builder or the developer.
True.
And यहाँ पर after 1 year, 2 year, it has been given back to, or probably it is given to the society.
Correct. In India, the chances are, as I said, developer considers especially residential constructions as a short-term asset.
Okay.
And when he considers a short-term asset, obviously he is also wanting to have an early exit, especially with RERA and everything. You have already a commitment.
True.
And then you want to exit out at the earliest. And then his responsibility or the developer's responsibility truly ends there. You as an occupier is not stopping to use the premises, and for you it's a long-term asset. So where the developer stops that mindset, you need to build that mindset to say that for him it's a short-term asset, for me it's a long-term asset. I need to invest back to ensure that my premises are maintained well in the long run and contribute back, both in terms of participation. कि मेरे घर के सामने अगर गंदा नहीं है इसका मतलब नहीं है कि I am okay. It has to also would mean that the entire ecosystem is proper, and that adds significantly to your real estate value, significantly to the real estate. And it can, for example, if I compare Navi Mumbai to Mumbai, okay, if you ask me, probably it's more planned, more organized, more structured, right? And Mumbai is now trying, certain pockets of Mumbai is also that way today, if you ask me. But rest of Mumbai have not probably copied it and tried to do it. So it's more how you own it up. You're absolutely right. The best way is to have one single owner in the long run of the project. The other is to to each member takes responsibility to ensure that my value is not eroded in this entire journey.
And that's very true. In fact, now as again, I would appeal to my audience that when we talk about having one window or one entry towards managing your asset, there comes the role of a facility manager. Facility manager technically should be from the day one of creating a building when the developer is creating in his mind. The way he thinks about having an architect on the board, the best engineer on the board, the best interior designer on the board, उसी तरीके से he should also consider the facility management companies to be his partners right from the day one when he thinks that he is going to create an infrastructure. यहाँ पर छोटी छोटी चीज़ें बहुत मायने रखती हैं और बहुत छोटी छोटी चीज़ें हमें दिखती नहीं हैं. आज जैसे हम कोई भी 5 स्टार प्रॉपर्टी के लॉबी में एंटर करते हैं, हम एक अलग फ्रेग्रेंस लेते हैं. So I have seen there is always a typical fragrance of Taj. In any Taj property, if you go, you will find a very different fragrance coming up. फिर वो ताज बांद्रा हो या ताज कोलाबा हो या ताज इवन कोरोमंडल हो या दिल्ली हो, दे हैव अ डिफरेंट फ्रेग्रेंस, एक यूनिक फ्रेग्रेंस है, सिग्नेचर फ्रेग्रेंस है.
See, facilities management typically touches all the 5 elements of a human being. और सारे 5 इंद्रियों को वो छूता है. Your sight, your taste, your smell, and your ears, okay, and your touch. All of them facility management touches. And if you want to truly do a proper FM services, and if you're not able to touch at least three out of the 5, you have failed as a facilities manager. You need to learn how to bring 5, but every time I can't feed somebody anything, मैं coffee भी चलो दे दिया तो दे दिया. But at the end of the day, at least 3 out of 5, the FM should be able to touch of the user. Then the FM is successful. And the experience is good for the person who's consuming it. Then you are successful. So Taj is, or any leading property, is trying to touch all the 5 elements. You spoke about cuisine. You spoke about fragrance. You spoke about the look and feel. It's primarily because of that.
So definitely facility is playing a very important role, and which is untouched subject till date, because I have seen when people negotiate in terms of hiring a facility management company, they cut corners. They expect them to cut their service charges. They expect them to cut their every element where they may make some decent money. So this is a very eye-opener conversation, which I'm probably seeing and appealing to all the corporate houses in today's world, where facility plays a very important role. And as rightly said, the institutes are having courses of facility management, but there is no motivation to go and take that course and learn it officially and become a certified facility manager. एंड देन अगर वो कोर्स पे मैं इतना पैसा खर्चा कर रहा हूँ और मुझे उतना आमदनी वाला नौकरी नहीं मिल रहा है, तो फिर मैं इतना पैसा खर्चा क्यों करूँ. बट फिर भी द एस्पिरेंट्स टू ऑल माई यंग जनरेशन who is looking out for career in facility management, it is a big appeal to everyone that this particular stream has a big career. जैसे मिस्टर साजी has spoken that every facility, कहीं पर भी हम जाते हैं, हम घर से निकलने से लेके घर वापस पहुंचने तक जो भी फैसिलिटी हम यूज करते हैं उसको हम एक एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं, और एक्सपीरियंस गिव्स यू, एक्सपीरियंस की कोई लिमिटेशन नहीं होती.
So Rahul, I had a very big take on it. So I used to take some sessions when I was preparing a course, and I was reflecting upon it, and I realized the fact. पहले क्या होता था, एक स्कूल देख के मालूम पड़ता था कि ये स्कूल है. आर्मी कंटोनमेंट देखो तो मालूम है कि आर्मी कंटोनमेंट है. So every building had its own construction style, aura. And it's the way it was built. आज के तारीख में सारे बिल्डिंग सेम ही लगते हैं. आप स्कूल देखोगे जिसमें पूरा ग्लास फसाड है और आपको उसके ऊपर एक नाम दिखेगा, and that's when we realize, oh, this is a school, not any other corporate structure. So today buildings itself does not have its personality. They do not have its own independent. It's just a square. It is just a square feet, which is today monetized as a school. Tomorrow the same building can be monetized as a hospital. It does not really matter, because you're treating it not for posterity. You're treating it today, what is the flavor of the season, how can I monetize it better, rather than, but earlier constructions used to be long-term thought. मैं स्कूल बनाऊंगा तो मैं 3 साल या 4 साल या 10 साल के लिए नहीं बनाता हूँ. It's a school which is there for my son, my grandson, and everybody will go to that particular school, right? That is not, unfortunately, the thought with that. Institutions are not getting created through these real estate structures. Adding to your point, the 15% growth CAGR is minimum the growth of real estate in the country today. 1.5. Okay? And as I said, any country is known by its real estate growth. So the potential for any FM professional in this field is huge and tremendous, provided we see value at both the sides. And then, keeping that in mind, youngsters is one of those in the future, the way the things are developing. If you are tactically very good in this particular field, there's always a taker, because roti kapda makan का जरूरत तो हर इंसान को हर जनरेशन में रहेगा. So at the end of the day, this makan wala component and roti wala component, which where FM really contributes, correct, will always be in demand. It can never go out of fashion. So people should actually be encouraged to come in, and we should see value in that.
How do we read a balance sheet?
So as I mentioned, that some things are very pass through, okay, and property tax is sometimes is getting impacted. And after that, we spoke about the fact that utility expenses, whether it's the electricity or whether it is the water. Electricity is typically a pass through, and it's the unit consumption is understood. When it comes to water, as I said, the water tanker cost is something which is a variable, and as much as you become self-reliant on water, whether it is through rainwater harvesting, whether it is to have a more judicious consumption pattern, you will obviously be reducing your spend on it. It has to be something which has to be conscious about. Then the next expense that you make is what? It is to ensure that your upkeep and the maintenance is proper. Upkeep and maintenance would involve two things primarily. Three components rather. One is your security, if you're residential I'm talking about. Security maintenance, housekeeping, waste management, and also the clubhouse kind of an amenities management. These are the three in today's any standard building. These are the three expenditures that you would have. Now here, what is the thing of spending more or less? The question here is, well, from my experience, what I've seen is, have we done the right manpower provisioning for all the areas? That means, have we done expenditure for the right job, for the right locations? Because if you have to have manning a security at certain areas, have we done it? If your swimming pool has an operating hours, are we providing the people for the right hours at the right particular place? As long as the members are availing and getting these services, and cost, most of us in today's world, people know what is the cost for an hour or cost for a person for a given role. There's nothing secretive about it. So there is nothing much for a balance sheet to read there. But how can it be misused? Okay. I have seen opportunities where there has been the cost of number of deployments have not been accurate. That's the first part where there could be an error. Second, there could be cohesion between the supply partner and the service availer or the society, where there is a certain components of that particular expenditure is while the check goes, well, the money rolls back to the committee, and I've seen it happening. So the only check that can happen is to have the right set of people running your society, and balance sheet is very, very correctly putting the number of deployment to the expenditure is very rightly spent. Then typically in any balance sheet, there's a last year's expenditure to this year's expenditure. That two pens are given as a comparison, right? So ensure that it is in line with what you're today availing in the services. Where two places where I would suggest the attention has to be given. Attention has to be given rather three places. Place number one, how is your repair fund getting utilized? Because repair fund is a discretionary spend. And because you cannot plan that particular spend. So ensuring that that discretionary spend is done correctly. मालूम है कि ये इतने जगह पे फ्लोर टाइलिंग चेंज हुआ था, उसके लिए हमारे को इतना खर्चा हुआ, नया डीजी का कंप्रेसर लेना था तो इसलिए हमने ये चीज खर्चा किया. So that is a very high expense amount, and we know this activity has got carried out, and the future plan of recurring, this does not become a recurring expenditure. For example, typically in building is that the civil expense, इधर पेंट किया, इधर मैंने पेवर ब्लॉक्स चेंज कर दिए, इधर मैंने ये सिविल स्ट्रक्चर को मेंटेनेंस दे दिया. Those are very, very intangible at times. So I would suggest it has to be as planned as possible, not ad hoc. And when you do that activity, do such an activity, you don't have to do it every 6 months.
Yes.
You don't have to do it any things repetitively. Like I know buildings where the paver blocks are, repaired probably every month. Okay, I mean pre-monsoon, post-monsoon, Diwali se pehle, you'll keep doing this entire thing because it's a recurring expenditure that is happening. It's something which is a red flag for me if there is a same expense being done repetitively. Now looking at a balance sheet per se, the third part is that ensure that the headings or the headline, the left side of the menu card is constant. And it is done by somebody who really understands the accounts and your CA has recommended you right, so that expenses are not camouflaged under multiple heads. So that is one way to ensure that you're comparing apple to apple. You're not comparing anywhere else. Second, AGM passes an expenditure or a spend and authorizes managing committee to spend an X amount of value for a special project or a particular activity. Ensure that the managing committee is keeping their expenses in that boundary. Because if that boundary framework is, because ILO very clearly said anything about 99,999 in Mumbai requires an SGM authorization or an AGM authorization. But if anything can also be interpreted the way you want, you may land up spending more than that and take it as two separate heads and put it into the balance sheet. To keep the healthy atmosphere, you may not want to bring it up. But when it becomes repetitive, it can create a unhealthy. So your spend on that particular expenditure may be high. Third is, how are your FDs being utilized? Because the more I've also noticed, I'm now specific to residential again, I'm talking about, more your corpus is, more your repair funds are, sinking funds are, the more people want to sit in the committee. The lesser it is, the lesser number of people wants to be a part of the committee. So it is important, the checks on the consumption or the utilization of FD, how it is really being broken. How is that authorization happened? Is that special purpose expenditure that you're making for that from the FD being broken is really utilized for that particular purpose? Are certain caveats that any member should look at and study the entire balance sheet. So two triggers, one is repair and maintenance fund is basically what you should be really focusing on. Secondly, how is your FD getting accrued over a period of time and how exactly it is getting used.
Oh. So any layman can go to the balance sheet and just keep an eye on these 2-3 elements which you have shared, and we can definitely ask on the more detailed explanation if required. Okay.
Right.
So now we are on the fag end of the episode. I would like to cover up some basic elements in today's generation where AI is taking over a lot. ऐसे कहते हैं कि AI replace कर देगा, how AI is going to be benefiting facility management in near future?
AI is nothing but a collation of data information and able to make your decision on a more fact-based findings, or AI being triggered or being configured in such a fashion that it can on its own make those rectify the corrections what people today are not finding time or the effort to put into that. So if I look at it, there are three elements where AI or any kind of technology is coming in today. One, anything which is repetitive. Okay, how can you reduce that repetitive job by utilizing these technologies, whether it's IoT, whether it is AI. Let's say meter reading. So in a large building, like buildings which have 30 buildings, 30 floors and above, you would require somebody in the morning, and if you have got BTU meters placed across the building, you today spend a person 2 hours just taking the readings.
Oh.
Okay, you want to go walk from the top till the bottom.
What is BTU?
Bill to unit. I mean any meter which is specifically charged to that particular tenant. So you go there and you start taking the readings. Mundane activity, adds no value, and typically you will take a guy who is an ITI and to make him do this particular activity today. Okay, so such mundane repetitive actions can probably be taken over by a technology. Second, where we are not able to interpret data. For example, there are so many data which comes in. You are not knowing today whether we spent more yesterday or versus today. None of us know. We are unfortunately, FM as an industry or as a company or as an institution within a building is not working on a day-to-day database. Okay, so that information when it comes to you, it is so much more easy. For example, if yesterday I spent 100 units of energy and today I spent for some reason 120, I need to know why that happen.
Additional 20 has happened.
Correct. Today we react when the bill comes. Okay. So that correction can happen if that information flow would have been much more closer to time, and I could have made the rectification, or I know whom to charge back or what needs to be done with that additional cost, right? There, I think AI and an IoT can really help us get that data churn faster.
Okay. So even adding up on this, consumption of electricity, consumption of water, कौन से घर ने कितना कंजम्पशन किया है वो भी शायद IoT डिवाइसेस से
हो
पता
सकता
चल
है,
सकता
because today the service provider itself is giving you a smart meter, but he is not linking you to the smart meter. Ideally, as a consumer, why should I only know my consumption at the when my invoices come in? Why can't my service provider, who is getting the data from my smart meter of my flat directly to them for them to invoice me? Ideally, that data should also be flowing into my, an SMS can come that yesterday from last 5 o'clock to 5 o'clock, आपने इतना consumption किया है. I can make that correction. My not knowing that information makes me spend more. Correct. So I think that's the first thing. So yes, it is possible, and it should be transparently available to each one, because we should be smarter, not the machine, right?
True.
So at the end of the day. The third thing is where I think the technology will be of great use would be to governance can become much more easier with technology. Because today, because FM is bringing people together for multiple domains, multiple departments, multiple functions. Today, each one works on its individual way. There is no cohesive way to understand, is my building healthy, is my building functioning properly, because everything is interlinked at the end of the day also, right? To make that cohesive working and to have a layer of governance, again, an AI or a technology would surely help.
Play important role. When we talk about the manpower, you highlighted a very important subject, that how the deployment has happened. Okay, be it a standalone building or be it a big time complex park. Okay, जहाँ पर हमें कैसे पता चलेगा कि सिक्योरिटी, हाउसकीपिंग, gardeners, the electromechanical team members, the facade management team, or to an extent your concierge team, कैसे पता चलेगा कि ये जो बैंडविड्थ हमने डाली है इन टर्म्स ऑफ मैन पावर की, ये सही है या गलत है?
I think today security is again based on two things. One, what is your basic requirement? Second, what is your threat perception? What is your risk perception? Correct? So if you are having a residential building where celebrities are living, so you may have to reinforce, and you may have a different mechanism of deployment, and both technology and people, to ensure that you are able to manage that building differently. Let us take everything being equal. So today, most of the FM deployments are manned roles. That means irrespective of a need, you are psychologically and physically more comfortable when you see a person being available. Okay.
True.
Right? So I'm not too sure how much of this will be disrupted through a technology, because that psychological perception can be given more reinforced or strengthened by various other mechanisms also in the future, right? When it comes to housekeeping or especially, I would suggest, my recommendation is, not recommendation, my thought here is that it has to be job based. It should never be based on, I need one person to just be available for me. It has to be the fact that it has to be based on the job that is at hand and how much time would that job really take to do. Typically, a residential building, because I'm focused in our conversation there now, is that waste management to housekeeping typically is completed in the first 3 hours of a day in a residential building. After that, if you ask me, there is no much role for cleaning in that particular building. They are actually spent or being given some job because they are available to you.
So we are talking about the residential property.
Residential property specifically.
Okay, so this is a very important subject. Else it will be a boomerang for all the other FM companies.
No, I'm from a residential point, and we then utilize these resources for something else. Okay, in a commercial building, again, because it's a 24/7 or an entire ongoing utilization of a space. Imagine in a residential building, your cleaning happens when nobody is there. Okay, your cleaning happens when there is actually no dirt getting created. Okay, so ideally, if you ask me, your cleaning should happen between 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the day, or maybe evening from, let's say, 5 o'clock till 9 o'clock in the evening. But you get cleaned between 9 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening, when there is actually no dirt being created by anybody, right? So that same thing get contradicts when you go into a commercial building. In a commercial property, you're actually doing it when the person is actually availing the services, and you are continuously maintaining and upkeeping. So there the manning roles and the regulations are very different, because you are manning it because somebody is actually walking that place, and you need to again maintain it because it is got dirty again.
It is consumed.
It is consumed. Coming to horticulture kind of a thing, which again that is something that you spend again. It again has to be based on what is the landscaped space or indoor plants, number of indoor plants that you have. You have to put a ratio to that. You can't just say, दो माली लगा दो काम हो जाएगा. Okay, I don't think it works that way. Right? It has to have a very clear task. What is the mali going to do in the entire year? Okay, is he going to manure during this period, replant during this period, trim, prune things during this period? He's going to do some, he's going to create new plants during, propagate plants during a given period of time. Typically, that is not how we view our FM, a person who is there on the ground. Deployment on that plane. So the purpose and objective is very, very different, right? So I would suggest, if you have a learned approach, not to save money, but to ensure that your enhancement of your assets and the utilization of the experience for the customer or the end user who's consuming it, I think you'll never go wrong with deployment.
Okay, so what I have understood from this, that the deployment should be based on the KRAs of individual.
KRAs, no, the need of your requirement.
Of the requirement.
Property. For example, I'll tell you, we all reach home in my building I'm talking about residential. We reach home at, let's say, about 7:38. One of my gates gets closed at 8 o'clock. Okay, because we are saving one security guard. But 8 baje se leke 5 baje tak, when the number of vehicle movements are the least, I have a person there. You get where I'm coming in. So at the end of the day, sometimes the user's requirement, or for example, swimming pool. We had our swimming pool running at two slots, but both the slots were such that where the minimal number of people actually visited the pool attendants were there during that particular period. Commercial infrastructure, that is much more learned, much more nuanced approach. But when it came to residential, I think somehow we go by standard thing what we did historically. I think that has to get shifted and changed.
Okay, so while we are conversing about the requirement and deployment, hiring a facility manager or a facility management company is also a big task, right? While doing a survey of any property, so these things should be taken into consideration. So the survey cannot be finished in 1 day's time, right? The survey of the property, that means it has to be, definitely the parking has to be monitored for 24 hours by 7. The footfall of the people from various days, right? From Monday to Friday and Saturday and Sunday, right? The consumption of the electricity in terms of HVAC management or the lift or any electrical element used during the period. Like in major of the corporate parks, we find there are food outlets like restaurants or bars or resto bars created on the top floor, which starts in the evening at 7:30, 8 o'clock and ends up at probably 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock or whatever the law permits. But the usage of the lobbies and the lifts and the car parkings are more during that particular period. So ideally, when we look at the property, the survey has to be done from the holistic point of view, and it cannot be having a traditional method कि per square feet पे इतने आदमी लगेंगे.
No, it could never be. And I somehow get concerned at times when people say that X square feet pe ye, and number of gates this much. No, it is actually based on what is the building specific requirement, how it is getting. Because building भी एक जीता जाता एक structure है. It has its life. It functions in a particular manner in that 24 hours. If we are not able to mirror that, If we are not able to mirror our services against that particular requirement, then I think FM is running, very, very tactically.
Okay.
Right? So I think that has to get understood by every FM, and that is missing today.
In today's world, we are talking about sustainability. We are talking about green buildings. There is no green certification as such. There is no certification from any government authority कि ये green chemical है या ये green building है. फिर भी लोग टैग लगा देते हैं green building. लेकिन वो green building को होता है बड़ा बड़ा facade. Facade is always dangerous for the environment because it is reflecting the sun rays. Definitely, because of those facade, the entire building is getting its temperature increased. ये सब होते वक्त हम किसी भी पर्टिकुलर प्रॉपर्टी को ग्रीन बिल्डिंग कैसे घोषित कर सकते हैं या हम सस्टेनेबिलिटी की तरफ कैसे लेकर जा सकते हैं उस बिल्डिंग को.
See,
लाइक सस्टेनेबिलिटी का मायना है इट्स मैनेजिंग इट्स ओन वेस्ट, रिजर्विंग इट्स ओन वाटर, कंज्यूमिंग द इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जितना चाहिए उतना ही, the safety which is there for the people who are, when they come inside, they should feel safe, and the guest or the visitors coming to the property should feel, oh, bhale ye building bahut purani hai but well maintained, right? So how sustainability is going to play an important role in this field?
Correct. So as I mentioned earlier also, FM का सबसे बड़ा contribution is to all the three elements: air, water and surfaces are actually managed by an FM service provider. So our contribution to sustainability is huge. Typically जब building बनता है आज के तारीख में तो FM operator has a very limited, FM professional has a very, very limited contribution. We enter once the building is already done. So we typically come in the layer today as a scope 3 emitter of carbon emission. And as a third party service provider, how do you contribute? More of these corrections happen on an operational level. पानी कैसे बचा सकते हैं या पानी को कैसे और रीयूज कर सकते हैं या रिसाइकल कर सकते हैं या इलेक्ट्रिसिटी के लिए और कोई सोर्सेज कर सकते हैं,
ऑर्गेनिक इनऑर्गेनिक वेस्ट को कैसे वर्कआउट कर सकते हैं,
हाउ कैन वी मैनेज वेस्ट, रिड्यूस, रीयूज, रिसाइकल, whatever we can do as far as the waste is concerned responsibly. But for me, if you ask me, a building is green when the practices in the building is green. Okay, it means you are not putting posters. Okay, you are ensuring that अगर मेरा elevator 1.5 meter per second पे अगर चल रहा है, is it really running at 1.5 meter per second or is it consuming more energy? Then I am fine, because you know for a fact, because anything which has got not well lubricated, or machinery are not well structured, you're actually eating away more power,
energy,
and more electricity. Similarly, when I'm using manure for my garden, am I using organic compost? Is it self-home generated? Am I buying that? How am I encouraging people not to use plastic within my premises? What are the alternatives that I'm providing? So the practices which is happening within my environment determines whether I am moving towards sustainable goals or not, from a building point of view. You're absolutely right. There are organizations, bodies which actually evaluate and rate you. Could be wellness or could be green certified or whatever, LEED certified, various other things. But yes, one is certification. The second is what are you really doing on the ground, and that determines your actual practices and impact on the flow. Forget about you moving for a certificate. As I mentioned earlier, the lifespan of a person or the ailment of a person has a direct contribution from these three tattva, correct? Both, whether it is the air or whether it is this. You will not believe, today most people suffer from various stages of cancer and various other things. And I would not be hesitant to say that most of it could be from the air. Okay? And the air has, because residual chemicals, you're using freon as a gas and you're continuously breathing it. It has its own impact at the end of the day. Okay? So it is important that what more can be done for my building to reduce, because 1,000 people, every 100 square feet, there's one person using
the property.
the property. I need to ensure how can I make it better for him. Am I avoiding using chemical reagents or chemical agents which are further not contributing residual particles onto the into the atmosphere? Things like that. But from a service provider side, if I look at from an FM practitioner, I would say the environment has a very less stake. It is more on social, the ESG mein, social and governance, which has got a bigger stake. Are my people who are actually doing these jobs are doing it on a sustainable manner? As I said, my person who is actually doing the job, they are in constant touch with these chemicals, they are in touch with these practices much more than probably a person who is an indirect user. So ensuring that my people are taken care to have their protection, their health is much more better maintained. So the social aspect or the social impact of getting people to carry out facilities management in as a scope 3 emitter is very huge. Third part comes to governance. How strictly are we enforcing what we believe in? If you are strictly enforcing what we believe in, then obviously we become socially responsible, and my practices, because everybody is conscious to say that I will not put plastic in my buying or my supply chain in what I'm procuring. How am I teaching my client or my customers in also changing their thought process and their practices? If they are trying to save 2 rupees and a penny, and then trying to what you call spoil the environment, which is going to be harmful for himself in the long run, how much am I able to educate them? I mean, you may not be able to change the decision, but how much am I able to at least put my thought and educate them on those practices? I think FM has a huge role to play, more than the building, because building एक बार बन जाती है तो बन जाती है, उसमें changes करना बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है. But as a service provider or as a FM practitioner, how can I operate the building more green is something which is important. You know for a fact that I have taken so many initiatives in my past only to bring in my day-to-day practices. How can I ensure that water, air, and the rest of the areas are maintained on a sustainable path?
Okay, so Mr. Saji, as we are in the very interesting mode of conversation, we have spoken about residential buildings. We have spoken about corporate parks. Let's talk about the big time institutions. Big time institutions like where there are hundreds of hospitals, there are hundreds of universities, there are infrastructure like mega airports, okay, which are built in acres and acres of land. I'm sure there is no thumb rule anywhere that this particular infrastructure will require this kind of manpower, this number of manpower. There is no thumb rule as such which talks about इतना आपको cleaning material लगेगा, आपको cleaning agents लगेंगे, आपको tools, tackles लगेंगे, machineries लगेगी. ऐसे कहीं पर भी thumb rule नहीं होता है, right? कि हम formula based business पे काम करें. So let's take an example of any new airport जो अभी बिल्टअप हो रहा है. वहां पे जो फैसिलिटी हेड या आर्किटेक्ट या जो इंजीनियर्स हैं जिन्होंने वो बिल्टअप किया है, हाउ डू दे एसेस कि हाउ मच इज गोइंग टू बी माय पर स्क्वायर फीट रेट फ्रॉम टुडे टिल नेक्स्ट 3 years? Of course it will be more after 5 years, after 10 years. So is there any because they need to create a manual to float the RFP. What is the basic elements to consider RFP? The manual, which is very important. अगर manual ही बराबर नहीं है तो RFP गलत. RFP गलत तो code pricing गलत. Code pricing गलत तो it's a big time failure of any facility management company. So what are those basic things where the institutes or big time corporate houses or big time government houses should understand before assessing, before floating a facility management tender or a contract?
Correct. So I'll take it in 2 parts, because I think your question also had 2 parts. The first part is, let us say it is a large institution which has multiple facilities. It becomes very difficult to actually assess the real need for that particular specific location and geography, okay, or for a specific facility. Now, in that particular case, the biggest challenge which somebody is assessing it is that what is the brand standard or what is the standard irrespective of the geography that the customer is really looking for.
Okay.
Because the services change, right? I mean, we gave an example of large institution which has got 100 properties. Let's say hotels have 100 much more properties, but they maintain a given standard, irrespective of where you are. Let's say a large corporate who has more than 50 offices. They ensure that there is a minimum threshold benchmark standard that they themselves ascertain. Now, to convert that standard to your RFP that is created by the by them is where the gap exists. You have an expectation which you are not able to translate to the document on which the person has been asked to actually propose. So the person who is proposing is not having a clarity on the standard, neither, and is going only by a pure document that has come to you, and then you are assessing and you're taking that as the Bible and making a proposal. And when you actually go to do the execution, you realize that what is written and what is actually expected by the customer has a huge difference. Now, do you have a thumb rule? I would say no. Okay. But for every function, Rahul, what in my experience, what I've realized is as long as the brand standard is understood, okay, the cost of upkeep is more or less the same. You don't even require an RFP. It is it's my study, my individual study. Experience ko chhod do aap. Experience has a cost. But to maintain and manage a particular function, let's say electrical services or HVAC maintenance or a simple thing as cleaning or a horticulture, as long as you know what is there and what is needed to be done on an annualized basis, your cost is more or less the same. To an extent, Rahul, my study says that even if you use a machine or you use manually or you use a robot, the cleaning per square feet is the same. The cost is the same, provided you know what is the output. A robot will do, let's say, 1 lakh square feet. Your machine will do, let's say, 40,000 square feet. Manual will do, let's say, 5,000 to 8,000 square feet. So the effective cost per square foot, whether you're using a machine or a man or a robot, is the same. Because the area per square foot cost is the same. Okay? But so you don't even need to have an RFP if that's how the customer is floating an RFP. मुझे देखने की भी जरूरत नहीं है. But what they have to actually spell out is what is the experience and the end outcome that they're really, really looking at.
Okay.
When they do not, they just give I've got 5,000 square foot. Fair enough, you have 5,000 square foot, this is my quotation. I don't even have to come and do a visit also. Okay, but then experience is then determined by us, not by you.
मुझे क्या चाहिए?
मुझे क्या चाहिए? No, मैं ये दूंगा. Correct. They have to be very clear if this is the experience my people would want there, then I am able to then cost it much better in my RFP. The expectation setting on the service levels is what is missing in our RFPs. Just giving an area, just giving number of properties or the geographies will not be enough information to actually provide a very studied response. If they're able to say my person sits 24/7 hours, this is what happens in my facility, I will be able to give a quotation based on that, right? My proposal based on that. Because if it's a plain area, the requirement is very different. But if I'm carrying out some activity there, my proposal changes, my requirement changes. It could be an educational institution, it could be like educational institution could also be multiple, right? Because you could have 10 institutions, 20 institutions. Is my cost per classroom same? Yes, absolutely same. But as a FM service partner, I should be able to ascertain their per classroom cost, their per washroom cost, which is very easy to be done. But if they say, no, now I want to change my service level from A to B and I want to give, because I charge them a premium fees, so because of which I want to give a different service levels to them, yes, this is what I can do and I'm going to charge you also X. Basic आप चाहिए, ये मेरी understanding है कि एक per classroom my cost is only so much. So sometimes the area becomes a misnomer. Sometimes the deployment itself becomes a misnomer because factual deployment may not be the same what is actually there on the ground. or the RFP itself does not spell out everything that is actually needed to carry out a studied response for carrying out the job, because 100 areas you may not be able to survey itself. For example, I know bank branches, when I used to propose, Rahul, they will have remote areas. You will have branches, small 1,000 to 3,000 square feet offices. They would want to have overnight proposal being submitted. But tomorrow they will say that carpet shampooing was also a part of it. Buying the local chemical from or items from the person is also a part of it. The scope changes, the shifts, right? So my entire assumption on which I proposed is not exactly the same that what is expected by the customer. While RFP never spelled out any of these additional nuances of renderings. तो वहाँ पे अगर आप ही मेंटेन कर रहे हो, अब ये चेयर साफ करने के लिए थोड़ा मैं बाहर से आदमी लेके आऊँगा. But I never factored in that particular cost in that proposal.
So the scope of work has to be
expected result. Scope of work तो बोलेंगे कि मुझे ये भी चाहिए, but ये बोलना चाहिए कि this is what I am using the premises for and this is the experience that I want. And that's the reason I like all the other service industries, Rahul, have succeeded much better than us. Hospitality has grading. They have a 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. And we know mentally this is what can be expected at 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, right? Airlines have some kind of a rating, right? A business class or a economy class. They know what can be expected in these classes. In our industry, unfortunately, we haven't been able to classify our services, because of which everything looks the same. A 5-star service also is valued at the same value as a basic service.
True.
That's the unfortunate part.
Very important and insightful point we have discussed today, because the person who is serving tea in 5-star property is also paid the same. But the person who is consuming that tea is charged more.
Absolutely. The
For the
cost is not
experience.
for the tea.
It is for the experience.
Yes.
So, very important point where we are talking from a point of view where a service needs to be enhanced. So that is how the facility management company also are facing the challenge in today's world, because they are not being categorized on the ratings of their experience,
So
of their
you're giving
turnover.
a proposal for the tea, but the customer is saying, I wanted the experience.
I want the experience.
Right?
Oh, very, very beautiful point. Anyway, thank you so very much for coming on to my show.
Yeah.